I do remember at first playing the violin. I didn't make a sound out of it. It was all about putting it underneath my chin and getting used to the feel of it. And I remember thinking it was very heavy and wondering how on earth I was going to manage to keep my arm up there for anything longer than about 10 seconds.
So what age would you have been?
I was 6, very nearly 7, and I had started the recorder and just started the piano, on to the idea of playing the violin because I loved the sonority of a string instrument, and I really enjoyed the sound of the violin and also the different sounds of the violin. I mean, I had often been listening to classical music because my parents had a big record collection and the radio was often on in the house. And I liked lots of different kinds of music, but classical music very much featured in the house. So I was quite aware of what different instruments were. I do believe that we, as human beings, are innately musical. I don't think that really there's a person walking on the planet that doesn't appreciate some form of music, whether it's just rhythmic, pulsing drumming or a very simple pop tune. I think each of us has got music inside us, and I think very often people make assumptions that they won't understand classical music, but I think that's more to do with a fear that they might not do something right themselves. Children have very few of these mental limitations, and so they're very open to listening to whatever it is, really.
Now, obviously for you obviously held that violin for the first time, and something must have clicked because considering how far you've come, it's quite incredible. Obviously, a lot of children, me being one of them, when they do hold an instrument for the first time, initially there's the excitement, but then it can quickly sort of wane off, can't it? How do you keep the passion going for actually playing instruments, do you think?
One very important way of doing that is for children, of any age and whether they're learning an instrument or not, but children to continue to go to live music, because what it is that really clicks inside and fires them up to continue to practice is that experience of people doing it well and live in front of them. It's a much more immediate experience than putting on a record or a CD or listening to a track on a computer. If they're feeling that the sounds that are coming out of their instrument at that point in time aren't as good as what they'd like, then I've often had this where I've done a concert and people will come up and say, I can't wait to get back home and start practicing. So I think that really it's got to be about the live experience.
And that is something that you're very celebrated for, is the emotion and the passion that you put into your performance. And I do wonder, what does go through your mind when you're performing a piece? Are you simply thinking about the notes and dots, or are you sort of visualising something? Or
it's quite hard to put it into words, and there's lots of different things that are going on depending on how the performance is going and how comfortable everybody is on stage, and the piece itself, because some pieces are a great deal more complex than others. Generally, my experience when I'm playing music is hopefully not too much about the technical aspect of it, because that's what practice should be about. Once you're standing in front of an audience, it's got to be about a performance, which has got to be about the emotional experience for all concerned, including the musicians. So really what's going on primarily in my mind is following the shape of the music and how I want to express it and how I want to really bring to life what is inside me and bring that out through my instrument.
Fantastic. And is there a particular either composer or piece that you particularly love to perform?
I like performing so many different pieces of music, and that's where the violin is such a terrific instrument to play, because there have been so many composers throughout the last few hundred years that have written wonderful works for the violin, so it's very difficult to get bored of the repertoire because there's an awful lot of it. So I really enjoy, it depends on my mood, because sometimes it's wonderful to have that cleansing effect of playing some Bach. On the other hand, there are so many wonderful pieces that have been written over the last 100 years. So I would say that probably romantic to late romantic music is is possibly one of my favourite areas of the repertoire. But there again, who can live without Beethoven? So it's very, very difficult. It does just depend, it does depend how we're feeling. And for me, whatever I'm playing is my favourite piece at the time, because you've got to be fully immersed in it in order to really give your very best performance.
And you mentioned some of the more recent work. You have premiered many different pieces. That must be quite a responsibility to be the first performance of new pieces.
Yes, it is. It's a huge commitment, and it's an honour, and it's a responsibility, because it's a little bit like, giving birth. You are giving life. You're breathing life into a piece of music that is otherwise sitting as dots on a page. So, yes, it's really important to me. I mean, I take any concert with a sense of responsibility, because the people that have come to listen deserve no less, and the music deserves no less. So I wouldn't have any less feeling of responsibility towards a piece that's been played 1,000 times. On the other hand, there's just that added awareness that this is the first time this music is going to be heard. It's the first time it's going to be a sort of an oral experience as opposed to just a visual one. So it's terribly important that you really do go all out to make it the best it can be for the composer and for the piece itself.
Now, tell us a little bit about the Naked Violin.
Well, the Naked Violin is a project that I began in 2008. It was really in response to sort of growing frustration that there still seemed to exist these barriers to classical music, and they were either real or they were imagined, but they were certainly there. So it was actually quite a bit of time before YouTube became the amazing resource that we've got now. So back in 2008, there wasn't actually a great deal of music for free on the internet, and even the internet itself was not necessarily such a reliable experience. I know it's hard to imagine that now, but not everybody had broadband. In fact, a lot of people didn't have broadband, and Wi-Fi and iPads and all of these sorts of things. So it was still very sort of early days. And I just felt that I wanted to find a way to reach an awful lot of people across the globe and find a way to put out some music where people could listen for free, to literally taste classical music and see whether it's something that they would enjoy. And so I recorded 3 very different pieces of classical music for solo violin, hence Naked Violin, so there's no beat or drum or piano or anything, it's just the violin. And I recorded them and released them on the internet entirely for free. And the response was quite extraordinary. Literally within days, I had 6,500 websites all linking back to my site to give people an opportunity to experience this music. And within just a couple of weeks, there were 250,000 downloads, and that number rapidly increased to 500,000. And I had amazing letters from people from all over the world thanking me for the classical music and saying that it had opened a whole new world to them. So that was very, very exciting. And then I went into the community to play music to people very much at grassroots level, people who wouldn't necessarily have had an opportunity to experience any live music, or perhaps even not any classical music on radio or anything. And that, again, was another amazing experience. So it's been a very important and very powerful experience for me to feel that I can break down these barriers and to enable people to really enjoy classical music. I hope that people will continue to make music available in schools and in hospices and hospitals and communities for people with varying disabilities, because that's what I've done, and I've found that it really works.
I have to ask you, our studio guests this afternoon, one of them is Ruth Keggin. She is part of a team who are aiming to raise money to open a purpose-built rehearsal venue on the Isle of Man for performing arts and community groups. She has taken on a grade 1-a-thon challenge, she's calling it, and it's to learn a musical instrument that she's never played before. She is a musician herself, but she'd never played the violin, and so she has taken on the task of learning the violin in less than 6 weeks to take her grade 1. So I have to ask you, Tasmin, if you have any words of advice for Ruth with regards to this challenge that she's taken on.
Well, first of all, bravo to Ruth. That's a fantastic achievement. So really one of the most important things to get right on a violin is the bow hold, because then you've got the possibility to not only create a beautiful sound, but lots of different kinds of sounds. So my advice to her is to concentrate on different sounds that she can make with the bow, and also to make sure that her hand position on the left hand is very good, so that she can have strong intonation. So short of hearing her, just sort of in a vacuum, those are probably the two things that I would say will help her to achieve the next level.
Oh, it's been lovely chatting to you this morning, Tasmin. Really appreciate it. Just tell us a little bit about what you've got coming up. Obviously, we've got this concert on Sunday on the Isle of Man. You also have the 4 World Seasons, don't you?
I do. I'm very much looking forward to playing Roxana Panufnik's 4 World Seasons in Poland, in Wrocław. So that's coming up in January. I have also a performance in the Barbican in January with the BBC Symphony Orchestra and Edward Gardner, and then various recitals up and down the country with Martin Roscoe, who I know. I know he's been to the Isle of Man because I played with him in the Isle of Man. Yes, it's a nice mixture of some work at home and abroad.
Well, we're very much looking forward to welcoming you back. We will be able to see you on Sunday performing on the Isle of Man. Tasmin, thank you so much for taking the time.
Many thanks.